Amazing CEO disguised as janitor exposes hidden bias 15 minutes later, transforms the entire team. The noise of keyboards clacking and laughter echoing through the open space of the startup never failed to remind Rachel of her place. As she maneuvered her mop around the desks, she overheard snickers about her cleaning routine. They think she knows what innovation is. One voice chimed in, a hint of derision lining her words. Just a janitor. The phrase hung in the air like smoke, each syllable a jab at Rachel's dreams, her skills left to gather dust. Once a promising problem solver, she was merely the woman in the uniform, ensconced in anonymity, but now, everything felt precarious. Every day she picked up the remnants of innovation: forgotten coffee cups, rogue chips, and scattered papers, while desperately fighting back against the swirl of frustration. It wasn't just about cleaning. It was the systemic bias that stung, the idea that a title could define her worth. Despite her pride in providing for her family, a lingering grief twisted inside her, a haunting reminder that ambition evaporated when her husband fell ill. Janitorial work was the only option left, yet in the depths of her heart, she bristled at the indifference shown by the very minds who crafted technology that could change the world. As Rachel went through her daily routine, she saw brilliance surrounding her. These people, creating the latest apps and platforms, were locked in a domain of privilege that belied the struggles they'd likely never encountered. Did they understand what it meant to work from the ground up? Could they ever grasp the dignity behind her scrubbing rags? The more she witnessed, the more compounded her anguish grew. She could feel them looking through her, past her, as if she were nothing but an obstacle to navigate around. Then an idea ignited within her, a flicker of determination amid so much doubt. What if she could shift the dynamics, shake the earth beneath their feet? Her heart raced with excitement and dread as she organized a company-wide contest focused on unconscious biases. It was a chance to pry open their perceptions, to expose the jokes and assumptions clouding the space between them. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a mix of dread and anticipation, Rachel watched as the contest unfolded. The room filled with tension, easy laughter replaced by the echoes of discomfort as her colleagues confronted their own biases. It spiraled into chaos, unearthing deep-seated prejudices as assumptions about her role were revealed in biting comments and dismissive gestures. In that moment, standing at the periphery of their discussion, she felt the weight of disappointment flood over her. Just as anger began to ignite among the group, it struck her this was the moment she had been waiting for. With steadiness and a heartbeat that felt like thunder, she called for silence. "I am Rachel, the CEO of this company." Gasps erupted, disbelief transforming into an unsettling silence. Would they rise to meet her truth, or would they retreat back to their misconceptions? That question lingered in the air, heavy and electric, waiting for an answer that could reshape everything. The stunned silence enveloped the room, a palpable disbelief shadowing Rachel's presence. The gazes that had once swept over her like a dark cloud suddenly bore into her, searching for authenticity, verification, perhaps even regret. She could feel the weight of their judgment and curiosity as she stood revealed, her heart racing to match the intensity of the moment. Rachel's mind surged with a mix of apprehension and exhilaration. This wasn't just about her revelation, it was a challenge to their perceptions, a call to disrupt the insidious comfort of their biases. In a flash, she realized that her role had shifted irrevocably. She was no longer merely the janitor. She was the mirror reflecting their ignorance, forcing them to confront their own prejudices head-on. "Your assumptions," she began, her voice steadying with each word. "You assumed I was simply a janitor. You laughed, not knowing who was standing before you, and now I ask you to consider this. What does that say about your leadership?" what does that say about your vision? The group shifted uncomfortably, the silence breaking into murmurs and glances exchanged, as realization seeped in like a welcome dawn. Eyes darted among themselves, gathering courage to speak up where laughter had once reigned. Rachel felt the tide shift slowly, a hesitant acknowledgement that perhaps ignorance was the true barrier to progress. You have talent, you have ambition, she continued, her gaze unwavering. But you also possess biases that bind you. It's not just my experience that challenges you, it's the narratives you've constructed that breed complacency. I've watched you create with passion, yet ignore the scope of reality outside this room. Knowing about your biases is the first step towards dismantling them. More murmurs followed, voices rising to question the dynamics of how they valued each other. It was thrilling, yet it echoed a stark pain within Rachel, knowing her journey had been marred by loss, while they toyed with unearned privilege. The quickening of her heart transformed into a simmering resolve. She could be more than a voice, she could be the catalyst for change. As she moved through the group, Rachel engaged in discussions fueled by her findings, sharing stories, her own struggles, and pressing them to recognize their complicity in a system that favored sameness over diversity. If we truly believe in innovation, she asserted, we cannot afford to stifle unique perspectives simply because they don't fit a mold. It is those stories that will drive our success. She saw her words seep into their consciousness, igniting concern and conviction. A few faces flushed with embarrassment, others turned resolute, fueled by the need to adopt a new mindset. However, Rachel knew the battle was far from over. She had opened the door, but the journey within was still uncharted. The hours passed as brainstorming sessions heated up, ideas flowed, and an electric undercurrent filled the air. Concerns of potential backlash existed, but out of the chaos, Rachel found her footing as a leader. She deftly guided the conversation, translating pain into possibility, transforming discomfort into dialogue. But as the day wore on and her colleagues began to embrace their revelations, a shadow of doubt flickered in her mind. Had she overstepped? Would they accept her as both the janitor and the CEO? She had exposed biases, yes, but would they embrace her lesson or simply forget it in a fortnight? Rachel stood before the exit, the weight of her leadership settling over her, yet uncertain how far she had truly come. The belief that she had set forth a powerful awakening hung in the balance, her heart torn between hope and skepticism. Then, just as she was about to leave, the loud chatter subsided, and a voice called out, "Rachel, wait." Rachel turned, her breath caught, as it was the most influential figure in the room, a person who had laughed at her before calling her back. In that freezing moment, she realized, the next step would define everything. Would it be acceptance, support, or denial? Rachel's heart pounded against her ribs as she turned to face the voice calling her back. The figure who stood up was John, the company's lead product manager, a man whose confidence often seeped into condescension. His brow knitted together, he looked as if he carried the weight of 100 unspoken thoughts. "Can we talk?" he asked, breaking the silence that hung like an unseen wall between them. The room was still, each pair of eyes glued to the exchange. Rachel felt a sudden rush of adrenaline. Would he challenge her again, or had the day's discussions truly shifted something in him? "Of course," she replied, forcing a calmness into her voice despite the tremor beneath. Leading John to a quieter corner, Rachel fought against the instinct to retreat within herself. The diminishing distance felt heavy, filled with uncharted potential. John rubbed the back of his neck, his uneasy manner not what she expected from a man known for his assertiveness. "I have to apologize," he began, the admission almost tangible in the air. "For laughing when you were introduced. I didn't even consider your background or your insights, and I think it set a poor tone for everyone else." Rachel processed his words, noting how genuine remorse often wove into conversations, a frayed thread waiting to connect a more profound narrative. "Thank you for saying that, John. It's crucial for us to recognize the systems in place that govern our perceptions. Ignoring them only solidifies the barriers we face in our work." He stared at her, surprise etched across his face. You really believe we can change? I do, she replied, her conviction crystallizing with each passing second. But we need to actively challenge our biases, not just today during this discussion, but moving forward. It's a commitment to disrupt our comforts. I want to be part of that change, he said, determination flickering in his voice now. I could bring this up in our next leadership meeting. We can implement what you've shared: training sessions, discussions. It might be step one, but it's a start. Rachel pondered his proposal. That could work, she acknowledged, but uncertainty flitted through her. Would others be as receptive? Would they dismiss John's initiative as just another fleeting moment of enthusiasm? But it needs buy-in from everyone, not just a few of us discussing from niche perspectives. Agreed, he said, a hint of frustration passing through his composure. Honestly, I think some of them still see you as just a janitor. This conversation has shifted that perception, but they might not give the same credence to our ideas unless you lead that next discussion. The thought sent a shiver along her spine. Leading a discussion at the executive level felt daunting. She was the janitor turned potential CEO, but could she establish credence in a room filled with those who had mocked her? Would they really begin to see her as their equal? A knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach, yet the flicker of determination began to light internal fires. How do I become that leader they respect? That they trust? Rachel asked, almost out of desperation. John's gaze softened. You've already begun that journey brilliantly today. Use your story as your compass. Your struggles resonate more with them than you think. Leadership stems from authenticity and vulnerability. It's your greatest weapon. Rachel straightened, the embers of resolve warming her internal doubts. Perhaps she could find a way to bridge the divide, to forge connection from their initial disconnect. All right, she said, gathering her thoughts into a semblance of courage. Let us set up that meeting. I'll outline what we talked about, but I'll need your support. I can't steer this alone. Absolutely. I'll have your back, he replied, a sense of alliance forming in that moment of shared purpose. As they rejoined the group, Rachel's mind reeled with fresh determination. Transforming a mindset was no small task, but perhaps her journey could guide her colleagues down a path that embraced diversity and divergence instead of uniformity. Just as she felt a confidence she didn't know could grow, a thought flashed like a bolt of lightning. If John was willing to support her, what other allies lurked within the ranks who shared the vision of a more inclusive tomorrow? The room buzzed with anticipation when someone else called her name from the far side. Rachel. Can we include your story in our communications next week? Turning her gaze toward the speaker, Rachel's pulse quickened anew. Perhaps she'd just begun a revelation larger than she anticipated. The moment of truth approached, tangled with both anxiety and a thrilling sense of empowerment. This was only the start. What awaited her in those upcoming meetings? Would her story shatter more biases, or would resistance crop up anew? Rachel took a deep breath as she prepared for the upcoming meeting. The fluorescent lights of the conference room felt harsher than usual, casting unflattering shadows on the polished table where she'd soon be seated. A part of her still hesitated. It was one thing to talk about change to John in a corner, but quite another to step into the spotlight in front of the entire leadership team. With trembling hands, she flipped through her notes, moments of the earlier discussions replaying in her mind. The warmth of support from John felt like a buoy, yet the shadows of doubt loomed. How could she possibly command respect in a room that had once laughed at her? She closed her eyes, summoning the memory of her journey, the years of hard work, the long nights, the skepticism she faced when she took on roles that seemed far removed from her standing. If she were to lead, she needed to blend authenticity with assertiveness. As the leaders assembled and settled, Rachel noted their varying expressions. Curiosity, skepticism, and a hint of excitement flashed as her name was mentioned. She had practiced her opening lines, yet now they fled like startled deer. Thank you all for being here, she began, her voice steadying with each word. Today, we're going to challenge perceptions how we view each other and ourselves in this organization." She saw some nodding, while others retained their skeptical expressions. A flicker of vulnerability mingled with determination surged through her. She shared her story politely but firmly, shedding light on her background with emphasis on the lessons learned. "I have spent years working my way up, observing both the strengths and the biases within this organization. I know firsthand how they can distort our views of one another." As Rachel navigated through her narrative, she noticed John leaning forward slightly, an encouraging smile breaking through the initial tension. With every word, Rachel felt the knot in her stomach begin to unravel. She noticed subtle shifts in the physical posture of some leaders, crossed arms unfolded, and brows raised in interest rather than skepticism. She transitioned into practical insights how entrenched biases could inhibit productivity and creativity. Each point she made felt more assured, no longer a plea for validation but a declaration of competence. She linked her suggestions to company performance metrics and embraced a structured approach to revealing bias through training and personal reflection. With every pulse of confidence, it dawned on her that she was making impactful connections, her words resonating with unfiltered clarity. And just as the tide seemed to shift, a voice cut through. "Rachel, do you really think a series of training sessions will alter deep-seated views? Some people simply aren't open to change." The voice belonged to Lisa, another senior manager whose reputation rested on a pedestal of conventionality, a stark reminder of the challenge ahead. Rachel drew in a deep breath. "Change starts with awareness, Lisa. Until we confront these biases, we perpetuate the cycle of exclusion. It's not about forcing change upon anyone, but inviting everyone to reconsider their perspectives." The room fell silent, minds visibly wrestling with Rachel's words. For a moment, all she could hear was the sound of her own heartbeat, echoing in the charged atmosphere. Had she hit a nerve? As the meeting progressed, she engaged along the thread of skepticism, encouraging dialogue and allowing room for discomfort. Each argumentative rebuttal stoked her inner fire rather than extinguishing it. Rachel increasingly recognized that conflict often flagged uncharted pathways for growth. When the session drew to a close, a certain electricity lingered in the air. John caught her gaze, and a mix of pride and concern flickered across his face. He nodded, offering silent affirmation that they had tapped into something profound. "Let us take these steps together," Rachel concluded, her heart racing. She had managed to initiate a conversation that had previously seemed insurmountable. As the attendees began to disperse, Rachel lingered for a moment, still riding the adrenaline of her performance. She turned to John, who approached her with an earnest expression. "You handled that brilliantly," he praised, but in the back of his gaze, something lingered, an unspoken question. "But what if the pushback won't come without challenges?" she interrupted, her voice steady. "But the real test lies ahead. I need to ensure this isn't a one-time effort, it requires persistence. How do I deepen this commitment?" The uncertainty loomed larger than before. Despite her triumph, Rachel realized she was standing at the precipice. Resistance could still crop up, and maintaining momentum against entrenched views would be monumental. As they walked out, Rachel caught sight of Lisa huddled with another manager, their furtive glances her way spoke volumes. This could escalate, and she knew that. With renewed resolve, she questioned if today's success would turn into fodder for future skepticism. Would she have it in her to maintain her momentum, or would she falter when they pushed back? The air thick with potential, she urged herself to focus on her next steps. The armor of her narrative needed to be tempered with the wisdom of endurance. Would she emerge a fortified leader, or return to the shadows? Only time would tell. The clatter of footsteps reverberated in the empty hallway as Rachel stepped out of the conference room. Each echo mirrored her buzz of anticipation and anxiety. She never imagined that challenging the entire leadership team would feel like both an ascent and a treacherous cliff dive. The air was thick with the potential for change, yet an undercurrent of hostility threatened to drag her back into the depths of doubt. Walking alongside John, she embraced the adrenaline but also felt the crackling tension loom larger. As their conversation continued, John shared his insights. "You did something remarkable today. You turned skepticism into dialogue. But I've been around long enough to know that maintaining this momentum is the real test." "Right. I need to stay ahead of the potential backlash. I can't just be a voice, I have to be a force," Rachel responded, feeling the weight of accountability settle on her shoulders. The notion of having to navigate the fragility of this newfound influence felt daunting, yet exhilarating. She needed a strategy that would resonate beyond the boardroom walls. Cultivating allies would be vital, particularly in light of Lisa's reaction. Rachel felt a flicker of fear mixed with resolve. Could she effectively influence those unwilling to see beyond their biases? Back at her desk, she watched her inbox flood with responses to her meeting notes. A few leaders expressed gratitude for the insights, while others, notably absent from the supportive responses, remained silent. Rachel noticed Lisa's name among the non-responders. A wave of apprehension washed over her. How deeply embedded could opposition be? Rachel dove into the task of creating tangible steps forward. She envisioned a series of workshops aimed not just at individual bias recognition but also at fostering open communication among teams. Each session would be designed to make participants uncomfortable yet engaged, provoking thought rather than defensiveness. In shaping the framework, Rachel's thoughts danced between innovation and practicality. That evening, as she crafted her proposals, a familiar stirring of self-doubt crept in. What if no one showed up? What if it only ignited more resistance? Rachel paused, allowing herself to reflect on the day's successes. She had ignited dialogue where silence often reigned. This realization sparked determination. Who better to lead this charge than someone who had endured the flames of doubt herself? Her phone buzzed. It was John, checking in to discuss the upcoming project to gain leadership approval for her initiatives. Despite the weight of her tasks, a sense of urgency filled her. She needed the support of the senior team, and their weighty influence required careful maneuvering. "Can we meet tomorrow to strategize on the presentation for the wider leadership team?" she texted John. She had to be meticulous. She needed solid arguments that would resonate with apprehensive minds. The following morning, Rachel walked nervously into the meeting room they had chosen. The fluorescence couldn't dampen her stern resolve. As John joined her, she noticed his supportive demeanor. He had a habit of listening first before offering his thoughts. Today, she needed to put his faith to the test. "Let us tweak the approach for Lisa and others who may not be willing to budge. We can summarize our message in terms of risk and efficiency," John suggested, actively engaging in her vision. "Exactly. I want them to see this not just as a moral imperative but as a business strategy. Diversity drives innovation, and I'll frame it through that lens. We can pull metrics from companies who succeeded through inclusion initiatives." As they outlined the agenda for the presentation, Rachel thrummed with unbridled energy. It was a new level of professional engagement, born from the flames of doubt but elevated by resilience. Yet Lisa's voice echoed in the back of her mind, a constant reminder that the battle for acceptance would be ongoing. Rachel knew the upcoming presentation might either affirm her progress or expose deep-seated resistance. They concluded their planning, and while Rachel felt armed with fresh strategies, a sense of impending conflict loomed. Would she succeed, or would this initiative deter future efforts? With a burning sense of determination, Rachel locked eyes with John. "We've got this," she declared. But deep within her, uncertainty lingered, coiling tighter. The moment of truth approached, her stomach knotted at what lay ahead. How would the leadership team respond when faced with the very biases they often overlooked, and would Rachel stand firm against the tides of doubt threatening to engulf her once again? The fluorescent lights in the meeting room buzzed softly, and Rachel took a deep breath. The atmosphere felt dense, charged with unspoken words and underlying tensions. She could see the familiar figures of the leadership team settling into their seats, some glancing at their phones, others whispering quietly among themselves. Today would be pivotal, but could she pivot them toward understanding? Rachel positioned her notes strategically, ensuring her data-driven approach was front and center. For a fleeting moment, she envisioned the room erupting into applause after her presentation, but the vision evaporated, replaced by a chilling reminder: this wasn't a rally, it was a high-stakes negotiation. Let us stay focused on strategy and numbers, she repeated to herself, like a mantra, shaking off the jitters. John offered a reassuring nod from behind her, and she realized he had been more than just a supportive ally, he was her anchor in these turbulent waters. As the meeting commenced, Lisa began with her typical briskness, her tone clipped. Let us hear what Rachel has to say. This better be good. Rachel felt Lisa's hostility, the sharp edge of her words, but steeled herself. This was her chance to turn that skepticism into engagement. Acknowledging our biases isn't just about moral responsibility, it's about seizing opportunities that diversity invites, Rachel began, aligning her narrative with Lisa's interest in efficiency. She cited specific studies. Companies that prioritized inclusion had outperformed their competitors by a noteworthy margin. She watched faces shift, some intrigued, others doubting. Then, tentatively, she posed a question. How many times have we overlooked innovative ideas because they didn't fit our existing paradigms? The question hung in the air, the challenge waiting to be embraced. She scanned the room, sensing the latent potential for discourse. When Lisa interjected, her skepticism radiated through her sharp gaze. Rachel, you talk of innovative ideas, but how do you propose to implement such changes without disrupting our workflow? It's not as simple as tossing around ideals. Rachel's heart raced. This was the direct confrontation she had expected, yet it unfurled opportunities for reframing. That's precisely the point, Lisa. Change doesn't need to be chaotic. My proposed workshops will be optional yet engaging, fostering dialogue rather than demanding compliance. She was pleased to note the flicker of consideration in a couple of faces. As she continued, Rachel found her rhythm. The more she spoke about fostering an environment that celebrated differences, the more she felt empowered by the collective weight of her words. She presented scenarios, outlining potential outcomes that challenged existing biases and encouraged participation from all team members. The resistance she anticipated began to soften. However, Lisa's expression remained steely, and Rachel sensed a storm brewing beneath the surface. There was something personal at stake for Lisa, something deeper than professional disagreement. Navigating that complexity fueled Rachel's curiosity, and she couldn't shake the feeling that addressing Lisa's concerns was paramount to her initiative's success. Toward the end of the presentation, curious murmurs replaced the silence. She had connected the dots, her points resonated, and yet, Rachel felt a keen tension lingering. Would the team rally behind her vision, or would they continue to defend their comfort zones? I appreciate the insights, Rachel, John finally chimed in, his voice steady. Then, addressing the room, he added, this is a productive direction, but I'd like to challenge all of you. How will you contribute to this proposed evolution? Rachel seized the moment, urging everyone to share their own experiences with bias. One by one, voices emerged, each tale colorful, raw, and human. She felt a powerful sense of unity building among her colleagues, and it sparked a light of hope within her. But then the tension twisted again as Lisa interrupted sharply, I still don't see a clear path forward. The room stilled, and the battle line was drawn. Would the connection forged in dialogue withstand Lisa's skepticism? Let us discuss that, Lisa, Rachel replied, not wanting to lose the ground she had gained. What could make this work for you? As the dynamic shifted once more, Rachel realized she was not just defending an idea, she was dismantling barriers. With every response and counter-response, she felt her own confidence swell, a realization that her voice held weight. Yet, even as this progress emerged, a chilling thought wormed its way back into her consciousness. This victory was fragile, contingent on the consensus that could still pivot in an instant. The meeting drew to a close, with tentative agreement hanging in the air. Rachel's heart raced. A small triumph had been struck, a slight chink in the armor of opposition. Yet the clouds of uncertainty still loomed large. What would happen when the deeper issues of bias and resistance reared their heads once more? Would Rachel's pioneering spirit be enough, or would personal battles overshadow professional ones? The echoes of the meeting room faded as Rachel stepped outside, the door clicking shut behind her. The cacophony of her racing thoughts drowned out any lingering applause she imagined from her earlier triumph. She leaned against the cold wall, seeking clarity amidst the swirl of emotions that grappled for her attention. Accomplishment coexisted with the gnawing uncertainty of what was yet to come. Did they truly understand? And what of Lisa's strident doubt? Rachel rubbed her temples, trying to soothe the burgeoning tension that had settled there like a heavyweight. Lisa's skepticism wasn't mere obstinacy, it felt personal, as if the underlying currents of their history threatened to resurface. Returning to her desk, Rachel flipped through her notes, seeking reassurance in data, but the numbers blurred as memories flashed of their past encounters, conflicts that had fermented into a competitive rivalry. How did this dynamic shape Lisa's resistance? More importantly, how could Rachel unearth the keys to unlock it? Rachel had always favored the logical, methodical approach. But somewhere within her, a voice whispered to explore emotions, delve deeper into personal motivations that guided her colleagues. She needed to shift her frame from pure logic to deep empathy. As she glanced out the window, Rachel was struck by the students on campus' lively conversations blended with bursts of laughter and moments of quiet contemplation. Each person was a story woven together, pulsating with life experiences that shaped their perspectives. Could she translate that energy into her approach with Lisa? She leaned forward, a thought blooming in her mind. A personal connection. She needed to humanize her proposal in a way that reached Lisa on a level beyond professional obligation. Maybe inviting Lisa for coffee would open a door she hadn't seen before, a space for vulnerability, for reflection rather than defense. Rachel drafted a simple email, inviting Lisa to discuss the initiative further. But as her fingers hovered over the send button, her pulse quickened. Would Lisa interpret it as a sign of weakness, or would it be perceived as an olive branch, an opportunity for collaboration? Doubt clawed at her, yet the prospect of genuine dialogue felt invigorating. With a decisive click, she sent the email, chastising herself for hesitance. The gamble ignited a spark of both anxiety and exhilaration. Engaging Lisa personally felt risky, but Rachel had come too far to retreat into her comfort zone. The hours passed by, the anticipation building like a pressure cooker throughout her day. When Lisa finally responded, suggesting a time later that week, Rachel felt a surge of adrenaline. Yet along with it came uncertainty. What if it didn't yield the results she needed? That evening, Rachel transformed her living room into a makeshift war room, filled with notes and data, contingency plans and objectives. She rehearsed dialogues, anticipated responses, and prepared to counter doubt when it arose. The act felt almost theatrical, but deep down, she knew it was also a rite of passage, a defining moment in her journey toward professional development. As she prepared herself for what could very well be a turning point, her thoughts drifted. Yes, she was challenging bias and ingraining a culture of inclusion within her team, but what would become of her resolute self if Lisa remained unyielding? Could she learn to embrace vulnerability even amidst the stakes lined so starkly before her? With her heart pounding in rhythm to the ticking clock, Rachel faced a truth that refused to be ignored: this engagement with Lisa would either unlock or barricade the path ahead. What waited for her in that coffee shop? Candid conversations, or a confrontation she couldn't escape? Rachel braced herself. The moment of truth was fast approaching, and she could scarcely afford to falter. Rachel arrived at the coffee shop earlier than their scheduled meeting, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wrapping around her like a warm blanket. She felt an invigorating tension swell within, a cocktail of hope and anxiety. But the clamoring thoughts in her mind dimmed to the steady beat of her heart as she surveyed the environment. People chatted in earnest, their laughter resonating with the mundane comfort of shared experiences. Rachel selected a small table in the corner with a view of the entrance, a quiet nook that felt intimate yet open enough to encourage flowery dialogue. She sipped a frothy cappuccino, letting the warmth settle her nerves while mentally scripting an outline for the conversation with Lisa. This wasn't merely about her proposal, it was a key to understanding, an opportunity to dismantle the barriers she felt between them. Seek to understand rather than to be understood, she whispered to herself, echoing a phrase she often preached to others. When Lisa entered, Rachel's heart quickened. Clad in a professional blazer, her colleague walked in with an air of purpose that added to Rachel's apprehension. This was no casual meetup, both women faced a critical moment that could redefine their professional rapport. Rachel stood to greet her, forcing a smile that veiled her swelling heartache concerning their past. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," Rachel started, gesturing toward the empty chair, her voice buoyed by a mix of determination and vulnerability. Lisa nodded, sitting down with an unreadable expression. Rachel could sense an electric strain running between them, they both knew the stakes. After a brief exchange about the weather and office buzz, silence enveloped them like a thick fog. It was palpable, heavy. "To be honest," Rachel began, her voice steadying, "I wanted to talk about our last meeting. I felt that I didn't quite connect with you." Lisa's gaze sharpened, warning bells ringing in Rachel's mind. Had she stepped over the line? The air crackled, but Rachel pushed forward. She took a deep breath, reached for her notes, and laid out her vision, but this time with a more personal lens, infusing anecdotes and vulnerabilities from her own story that had fueled her desire for change. As Rachel spoke, she focused on the values that underpinned her proposal: access, opportunity, equity. She leaned into the emotional weight of her experiences, letting the narrative flow naturally as she intertwined it with the initiative's potential benefits for the team and, importantly, for Lisa personally. Lisa listened, no sarcasm, no distraction. Rachel couldn't help but notice the subtle changes in her colleague's posture, the slight softening of her features as they delved deeper into the conversation. "I just don't want to push too hard," Rachel continued. "I've seen how past projects have faltered because of reluctance or resistance. Your insights are invaluable to me. I want us to work together, not against each other." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Lisa spoke. "You know, I've been waiting for someone to approach it this way. I've felt sidelined, like my ideas didn't matter." Rachel's heart thumped at the revelation. It wasn't just about the resistance Rachel perceived, it was also about feelings of exclusion that Lisa harbored. As their conversation evolved, Rachel realized Lisa's skepticism stemmed from past experiences where she had felt unheard and understanding that could bridge what had been fragmented between them. As they continued their discussion, new possibilities flickered before them, ideas bouncing back and forth that reinforced collaboration over competition. Just when it appeared they'd established a foundation of mutual respect, Lisa dropped the most unexpected bombshell: "I think I might have the connections we need to align our teams better. It's just that requires trust." Trust, that word hung in the air, a gossamer thread delicately spun between them. Rachel's thoughts raced. Could trust truly be rebuilt in one conversation? Was she ready to lay more on the line and accept that? Vulnerability, too? With a nod of understanding, Rachel felt emboldened. How do we begin to cultivate it? Meeting Lisa's gaze, she sensed something had shifted, an opening that had been previously blocked. She remembered her earlier sentiment, the whisper of courage, and steeled herself for the truth yet to be uncovered. "What do you really think about our initiative?" she asked, her voice unwavering. And there, in that small coffee shop corner, under the gathering clouds of uncertainty, a new chapter awaited. Rachel sat in the coffee shop, the echoes of their conversation still fresh in her mind. The air was thick with possibility, yet the weight of their revelations pressed on her chest. How do we begin to cultivate it? She had asked with genuine earnestness, but uncertainty still lingered. The thought of trust, how fragile and completely necessary it seemed, sent shivers down her spine. Would it really transform their work dynamic? Lisa's gaze deepened, and after a moment of hesitation, she responded, "Let us start with transparency." Her words stirred something within Rachel, a call to embrace vulnerability in a professional setting where discretion was both an asset and a hindrance. Transparency, Rachel echoed, rolling the word on her tongue like it was a foreign delicacy. That means sharing not just our successes, but our failures too. Yes, Lisa affirmed, a trace of enthusiasm creeping into her voice. We need a culture that embraces growth, where we can discuss what went wrong without fear. Rachel's mind raced with possibilities. The idea was both exhilarating and terrifying. Vulnerability was the currency of honesty, but it came with risks. She considered her own track record. Had she been too guarded in her previous partnerships? Had her reluctance to share her own missteps hindered the kind of rapport she craved with her colleagues? Feeling emboldened, she leaned forward, her desire to connect driving her actions. "I've hesitated to share my struggles because I thought it might undermine my authority. But I see that's what I'm missing. It's time to change that." Lisa's eyes flickered with understanding. "That's a pivotal insight, Rachel. I can relate. We're all human, yet corporate environments often strip us of those personal layers. Maybe that's why I felt sidelined. You weren't just advocating for a proposal, you were trying to armor yourself against critique." Rachel felt a profound itch of realization. This wasn't merely about putting together an effective team initiative, it was about reshaping the way they engaged with each other. If they could manage to foster this kind of vulnerability, it could shift the paradigm of their interactions forever. As they discussed practical steps towards this transparency, Rachel wrote down ideas on a napkin, her heart pounding with a heady mix of excitement and dread. The risk felt tangible, yet she yearned for the authenticity this could breed. "What if we set up regular check-ins?" she proposed. "Moments where we can address not just our milestones but how we're feeling about our work as well, our respective frustrations and triumphs." "Perfect," Lisa replied, a glimmer of enthusiasm lighting her features. "The team needs to feel safe to express themselves. It's more than just processes. We have to become emotionally invested." Rachel knew she couldn't do this alone. Trust couldn't be fostered in a vacuum. The hospitality, the warmth she longed for in her workplace depended on a team-wide commitment. As they continued brainstorming, Rachel felt herself shift from fear to determination. Her perception of herself as a leader evolved in real time. No more would she shy away from candid conversations. Each idea she shared fueled her resolve. Transparency was not just a strategy, it was a personal commitment, a pillar upon which their future collaboration could stand. But as the ideas flowed, a nagging doubt crept in. Would the rest of the team be receptive? Could they abandon years of conditioned resistance to vulnerability that plagued corporate culture? "Lisa," Rachel said, her voice steady but low, "are we really ready to take this leap? What if it doesn't work? What if the team closes up even more?" Lisa met her gaze, an ironclad solidity emanating from her as she replied, "We have to trust this process together. You've already taken the first step, and you won't be alone." Rachel felt the flicker of fear compete with a burgeoning sense of power. "Together," she echoed, allowing the word to cement in her mind. Maybe they could reshape the team's culture, and by extension, their own identities within it. A small part of her wondered if they would emerge stronger. "What do you think is our biggest challenge?" Rachel asked, a cautious optimism tinged her voice. Lisa smirked, her confidence growing. "Ego. We all need to set aside our personal agendas and replace them with a shared goal. That's the real test." Rachel's heart raced. Their journey was just beginning, veiled in uncertainty, with the outcome suspended in a delicate balance. Just as they stood to leave, a dark thought crossed Rachel's mind. Would the leap into transparency truly be a fortress against the weight of their past conflicts, or would it unravel the very fabric of their professional lives? Rachel took a deep breath. The moment of truth loomed on the horizon. She wasn't sure if she was ready. "Let us schedule our first team meeting," she said, a flicker of resolve igniting within her. The question hung between them, unaddressed yet palpable: what would it cost to reclaim their authenticity? That uncertainty soothed her fears for the moment, but the looming leap into their next steps would require both courage and relentless commitment. With the dawning of a new day, Rachel stood at her office window, brimming with anticipation. The sun streamed in, illuminating her path as if to celebrate the transformative journey she was embarking upon. The discussions with Lisa had unfurled a vision for change. Beneath the surface of their workplace lay the potential for a revolution not defined by titles but by shared experiences. Today marked the first team meeting where they would introduce the initiative encouraging transparency. She had spent countless hours refining her thoughts, structuring every word to resonate with her colleagues while simultaneously addressing their unspoken fears. Each step toward this moment had filled her with resolve. The discomfort from the past had morphed into a clarion call for collaboration. As her team gathered in the conference room, the immediate atmosphere buzzed with inquisitiveness. Rachel took her place at the front, eyes scanning the faces that had once barely registered her presence. She felt the weight of responsibility resting upon her shoulders, yet an electric energy pulsed within. This was her moment to shine. "Thank you for coming, everyone," she began, her voice resonating with determination. "Today, we're opening a dialogue about something vital: how we can cultivate transparency and trust within this team." The initial bubble of skepticism was evident in the way some colleagues exchanged guarded glances. But powered by the recent unity forged with Lisa, Rachel pressed on, framing her narrative with her personal experiences and the valuable lessons she'd learned. "The journey toward inclusivity begins with vulnerability," she articulated, weaving her story into a tapestry of shared aspiration. Time passed as she outlined their strategy for check-ins, moments dedicated not just to discussing objectives but to sharing feelings and frustrations. As her colleagues absorbed her words, something shifted in the room. Interest bloomed where doubt once lingered. Rachel could see the walls slowly crumbling, reactions blossoming from weariness to cautious engagement. Participants started responding, sharing their struggles and aspirations. One by one, voices rose from the group, fearful yet brave, revealing hidden challenges that they had shied away from before. Each story woven into the fabric of their discussion painted a vivid picture of the deeper connections they all craved. After the meeting wrapped up, Rachel felt the urgency of the moment wash over her. She had begun to establish herself as a leader whose journey wasn't merely defined by past struggles. She was advocating for a paradigm shift as a catalyst for change, a new identity forged in authenticity. Weeks passed, and as momentum grew, Rachel felt anchored in newfound confidence. The transparency initiative permeated their interactions, encouraging shifts in perspective. Everyone began to embrace conversations that had previously felt taboo. Rachel increasingly recognized her role not solely as a proponent of change but as a proactive participant. Trust blossomed as peers engaged in honest dialogue about their contributions toward the collective goal. Challenges remained, especially as reactions from entrenched skeptics surfaced. Lisa, the once oppositional voice, had transformed into a staunch ally, standing beside Rachel during difficult discussions. Together, they deftly navigated pushbacks, maintaining their commitment to the principles they had set forth. Their camaraderie symbolized the resilience of embracing vulnerability and trust. Then came the day of the company's performance review, a gathering where Rachel would present the results of their transparency initiative to the entire leadership team. The pressure was palpable, but for the first time, she felt ready to confront any challenge. As she stood at the podium, presenting not only the numbers indicating productivity boosts but also sharing heartfelt testimonies reflecting the personal transformations unfolding within the team, the leaders listened intently. "Today," Rachel proclaimed, "we celebrate growth. Not just in metrics but in relationships that reflect our shared humanity. We are more than titles, we are a team committed to embracing the diversity of our experiences." The applause that followed shattered any residual doubts. In that moment, recognition settled upon her like armor. The acknowledgement from her peers surged with validation. She had transformed from the janitor hidden in the shadows to a leader heralding authenticity and fostering dialogue. As she stepped down, a sense of fulfillment embraced her spirit. She had conquered her fears, garnered respect, and established a position of influence that she had only dreamed of before. Rachel looked around the room, meeting the eyes of many who had once overlooked her. Each glance reflected a newfound appreciation for her journey, a testament to the power of resilience and connection. This was not merely the end, it was the beginning of an empowered path where silence had given way to vibrant conversation, where beliefs had shifted, and where Rachel had proven that true leadership thrived on authenticity and vulnerability. As she walked out of the conference room, a deep sense of pride enveloped her, a feeling of accomplishment that marked the culmination of personal growth. Rachel had achieved not just her professional aspirations, she had reclaimed her identity. In this new chapter, she recognized her voice as a valued instrument in shaping a future built on understanding and collaboration. The journey ahead still held uncertainties, but nothing could eclipse the radical transformation she had embarked on. And thus, Rachel stepped confidently into her future, ready to continue making waves of impact in ways she had never fully imagined before. If you believe in the journey of transformation and the power of individual voices, you need to subscribe now to catch future exclusive stories of overcoming adversity. Leave a like now to support this channel, feeding the algorithm that helps others discover the strength in personal journeys. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness these impactful conclusions. Your engagement matters, and every action contributes to uplifting stories that inspire personal empowerment. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. We want to hear from you.